Hello, everybody, and welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Blake Ray,
And I'm Duke Ralston.
and we are here coming to you from our respective studios
Yep,
where we work together on a little something called Tennessee Macabre.
that's right.
And in honor of tomorrow's premiere of The Terror, we've decided to come together and talk a little bit, talk to you
That's
people.
right. Actually, the premiere is Saturday, the 27th,
Mm-hmm.
and I will pop the link to our YouTube channel on the page.
Excellent.
So, what I wanted to do today for those folks, a lot of folks, I grew up watching the Corman Poe cycle of movies. When Shock Theater aired in Chattanooga, it's about 10 to 15 years after these films were made. And these films were often on Shock Theater. And so I grew up watching these things. And I realized that a lot of folks may not have watched them, but they're a lot of fun. So we're going to rate them for you so you know where to start.
Excellent. Now, I'm not super familiar with these movies.
Uh,
I am familiar with Corman,
yep.
of course. I come to him more from I guess you would call it the B movies he did,
Right.
you know. But
So
I would
the
say Corman
remarkable
go ahead.
the remarkable thing about Corman is Corman starts out in really low budget B movies. Okay. And he works his way up and he does Bucket of Blood and Little Shop of Horrors. And
Mhm.
he does one on one weekend, one on the next weekend, and they're low budget, but they're well acted, they're well produced, they're well written, and he gets a lot of attention. And this is what these films that we're going to discuss today were backed by API. So this is Corman beginning to exit the world of B movies and move into big studio production.
Which is
And
impressive.
which is impressive. There's not many people have accomplished that feat. And um these are still B movies. I think you still have to call them B movies, but they have much more of a budget than say Bucket of Blood did.
Which Bucket of Blood is a testament to what can be done on a shoestring.
Yes, it is.
Because it's a great movie.
It really is. It really is. So what we're going to do is rate them for you. Want to invite everyone, of course, to stream Tennessee Macabre hosting the Terror. You can stream it with us, and we'll be in the chat on Saturday night. But if you watch this, say you watch this Monday, then it'll still be out there. So go give it a watch, okay? Just watch the damn show. So
Yeah.
let's say a few more things about the Corman Poe cycle before we get going. First of all, about half of this cycle was screenwritten by Richard Matheson.
Mm.
For those of you that are not familiar, Richard Matheson starts off in pulp, and he penned I Am Legend, which has been the basis of three wonderful movies. Well, two wonderful movies, one not so wonderful.
One movie.
One movie, yes,
It
one
sure
movie.
was on film.
It was on film, yes.
Yeah.
But he was an exceedingly talented writer of horror and
Mhm.
science fiction. And these movies all were based on Poe, at least loosely,
Mhm.
except for The Terror, which we're going to discuss in just a minute. But they all drew on multiple sources from the pulp era. There's a lot of Lovecraft in these movies.
Mhm.
They all deal with insanity as a theme, which is a very Lovecraftian thing. They also draw elements from other great horror writers, particularly horror writers from the pulp era.
Yeah. And pulp, for those of you who don't know, pulp is it was a type of writing. It was like a moment, like kind of like early punk was a
Yes,
moment. Like it
yes.
still happens, but it's not the same,
No,
you know?
no,
Like, and a lot of pulp dealt with themes that you couldn't deal with in mainstream writing.
absolutely.
You know, you deal with criminality, insanity, uh, horror, but not the oops, a scary monster kind of horror, more the existential kind of horror.
Yes, yes,
And I think that's really important to keep in mind as we go into these movies.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. They're tied together by Poe's themes more than his stories, I think.
Sometimes tied together, um, sometimes very loosely draped.
Hmm.
Um, one of them just has a Poe quote, and that's it. You know, but we'll get to that in a moment. The other thing that I wanted to mention, these films start in 1960 and the last one is shot in 65. But these films all dip into psychedelica.
Yeah.
Before psychedelica was a thing. So I did a little bit of research on Aldous. Um, the Tingler, that movie kind of deals with entering how much, how, did these guys know Aldous Huxley? Were they in the know about LSD? That's something that I want to research further at a later date. But the openings of all these films look a lot like, they always remind me of a video of White Rabbit from 1968. Okay. And a lot of them will feature these psychedelic, I call them psychedelic dream sequences or near psychedelic dream sequences. And sometimes it's not a dream, it's like a nightmare, it's like a waking dream. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
a straight up dream, but they're heavily, it's to me, this is they presage the psychedelic era that comes 5 years later. However, they arrive at that. Okay.
So it was part of the zeitgeist at that time, I think.
Part of it anticipates the zeitgeist that comes about in 1968.
Yeah. And so you got to wonder which came first. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you
That's a
know,
relationship that I want to explore a little bit further.
yeah, because I think something like, and to go outside the realm of the Poe movies with one I'm
Yeah.
more familiar with, something like X, the Man with X-Ray Eyes. It's a trippy movie.
Yes, yes, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
When you stop and think about it, Bucket of Blood and Little Shop of Horrors, in their own way, are kind of trippy.
Oh yeah.
They're surreal.
Yeah. There's I've often talked about the difference between daytime and nighttime horror when I'm
Yeah,
talking about horror. And daytime horror to me are things that are scary during the day. You know,
yeah, yeah.
that's your serial killers, your
Hmm.
slashers, stuff like that.
Yes, yes.
And then you have nighttime horror, which is more the nightmare horror.
Right.
And I think Corman is firmly in that second camp.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's just get the rating started. And I want to start off by saying that all of these movies are excellent. Okay. Would
Hmm.
watch any of them anytime with anybody.
Hmm.
But number 9 for me is The Terror. It's
Yeah.
the film that we're going to be hosting. It's public domain, which I think generally everyone would agree with me that it has to be number 9. Matter of fact, some people don't even include it in the list because it does not reference Poe in any way.
Mm.
Okay. And the story behind this movie is that um, they had just finished shooting The Raven and they had these magnificent sets left over. And Karloff didn't have to fly back to London until midweek. And the Zarkov looked down in his pocket and he said, "You know, I got $27 and 71, 72, 73 cents. Let's take this set and make a movie."
Mhm.
Okay.
I love it.
See, I did tell you. So Corman throws something together. The only reason for putting this movie at number 9 is that it is not nearly as well written as the other movies.
It's got
So
pacing issues.
it's just pacing issues. They pull several themes into it. They've got a witch, they've got a ghost. Karloff's character is supposed to be this nobleman, but he's really not. He's the son of the witch. I mean, it's a little bit on the it's on the far side of unbelievable.
Yeah. 10 pounds of 10 pounds of manure in a 5 pound sack.
Exactly, exactly. But the acting is incredible. The cinematography is incredible. The set, the costuming, everything is fantastic. So it's still a good watch. It's just a little bit, it doesn't make as good a sense as some of the others.
Yeah.
But what it does, this is like the movie that the stars fell on. Okay.
Hmm.
This is Jack Nicholson's first lead, and he does a bang up job. Jack Nicholson is also one of the uncredited directors.
Yeah, you were saying something about that. Tell me more about the directors.
Well, you had 7 or 8 guys that helped direct this flick. Practically everybody involved up with this flick went on to stardom. But
Mm.
Francis Ford Coppola is one of the uncredited directors. So this is his directorial debut.
Mm.
Dick Miller plays a servant, and Dick Miller doesn't become as famous as Jack Nicholson, but Dick Miller worked from the time he did Bucket of Blood and Little Shop of Horror up until he died fairly
Mm.
recently. He always worked. And you see him in a lot of bit roles. And Gremlins is one that I think of that's a more modern film. He plays the snowpile driver, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he has, his career starts with this film.
Mm.
Because it actually starts with Bucket of Blood, but this is the first mainstream film he does.
Mm.
So Bucket of Blood, not Bucket of Blood, the Terror produces a lot of people who go on to do great work in Hollywood for the next 20 or 30 years.
What do you think it was? Do you think it was their talent or just the opportunity to?
I think it was their talent. I think you have to say that Corman had an incredible eye for talent. He
Mm.
surrounds himself with some great actors, some great directors. So he has an eye for this sort of thing.
That's good.
And they took a little bit of nothing and they ran with it. And while this certainly wasn't a huge box office success and it not one of the best movies ever made, we're watching it and we're talking about it.
There's a lot of movies that don't have that much staying power.
Yeah, yeah. But this one does. This one
Yeah.
does. So I'm going to put that one at number 9. And the one that I'm going to put at number 8, it hurts me a little bit because I like the movie. It is very much Poe based. Okay. It has some of my favorite actors in it. It has Peter Lorre. It has Jack Nicholson. It has Boris Karloff. And it has Vincent Price. and it's based on my favorite Poe poem, The Raven.
Mm,
And the reason I put it at number 8 is it's horror comedy,
mm,
which I think has a definite place, but it to me, it's hard to rank it can't rank it above The Pit and the Pendulum or The House of Usher. I just can't
mm,
do it. You know?
yeah.
So I
Fair
love
enough.
the movie. I mean, anything with Peter Lorre. Lorre is kind of an unsung great.
Hmm.
Um, anything with Peter Lorre is good, in my opinion.
And horror comedy is one of those things where it's really you're threading a needle.
Yes,
You know,
yes, you're threading the needle.
it's difficult. It's a tall order.
It's a tall order, and, comedy, I think, doesn't age as well unless it's really, really good comedy. It doesn't age as well as horror does.
Yeah, because fear is universal. Laughter is very, very selective.
Yes, yes, and I think that this would have been something that you would have taken the kids to in '63, and they would have loved it. I'm
Mm.
not so sure that our kids would.
Oh, got you.
Yeah. I mean, they'd watch it, but I'm not so sure that they would enjoy it as much.
Yeah. All right. So what do you put at number 7?
Number 7 for me is Tales of Terror. Okay. And I'll tell you why it is not comes in at number 7 for me. This is one of the first portmanteau, I guess is the fancy term for it, but it's a trilogy of tales, all based loosely on Poe. They're probably based more closely than some of the other things in the Poe cycle, but my favorite tale in this is the Cask of Amontillado, and it varies significantly from from the story. Okay, and it actually incorporates elements of several stories.
Mm.
Um, then there is the case of M. Valdemar.
One of my favorite post stories.
It's one of my favorite Poe stories, but I did not like this treatment of it. And I'm not entirely sure why I didn't. It's not horrible. I just didn't. And so that's why I'm going to put this one at number 7. Okay. The Cask of Amontillado is one of my favorite pieces of horror. I mean,
Hmm.
it's funny because this has my favorite and one of my least favorites. So, you know,
Anthology movies can be a hit or miss thing.
and I think it is. It's a hit or miss thing.
Yeah.
But the Peter Lorre is what is Vincent Price plays Fortunato, and Peter
Yeah.
Lorre plays, and I can't remember the other character's name.
Um,
Is it Locate? No,
Montresor.
Montresor. He plays
Yeah.
Montresor, and it gets into a little bit more detail on Montresor than we get in Poe's book. Montresor is a heavy drinker, and um, um, he has drank his fortune away,
Hmm.
and Vincent Price's character has an affair with his wife, and so he waltzed them both up
Yeah.
in the water. And his wife's favorite cat gets walled up with him, which brings in one of my other favorite Post short stories, The Black Cat. Is it The Black Cat where the
The
cat gets
Black
walled up?
Cat. Yeah.
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 So I kind of like this as a combo, So, but again, it's a great movie. It You got to assign numbers,
Yeah.
and so I'm gonna because of the case of M. Valdemar, I'm gonna put this. And what are we on number 7, number 6,
Yeah. We're on number 7.
number 7? Okay, so where do we go from there? Okay, this is where I'm gonna get controversial because all the ones that we've got left are really good. Okay.
Mm.
And when people find out what I place at number one, I may be kicked out of the Vincent Price fan club.
Oh,
They may
really?
revoke my card. Yes.
Mm.
But I am going to put our next movie, which is number six, as The House of Usher.
Really?
Yes. It's a good movie, good, solid movie. Again, and this goes without saying in all of these movies, but the costuming is impeccable. I like to call this smoking jacket horror
Okay,
because
I can see that.
they put Vincent Price in these incredible smoking jackets, and it's just luscious costume. I would love to wear this costuming. Okay.
Yeah.
And these movies, I guess, would qualify as steampunk before steampunk is even a thing. And
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
but um, Follow the House of Usher very loosely follows the short story. I guess it's more Pose is more of a novella, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like halfway between.
Yeah, halfway between a short. It's a long story.
Yeah, it's either a long short story or a short novella,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think it depends on who you ask.
yeah, yeah. Um, and this story has, the house cracking, and at the end of it, the house falls into the mire, which is exactly the way that Poe's story goes. But how you get there is a lot different than Poe's story.
Mhm.
And sister comes home and is engaged to this gentleman, and Vincent Price will not allow her to leave. Roderick Usher,
Mhm.
and she has catalepsy, and he convinces the fiance that she's dead, and she's really not. And probably the best scene in it is when she comes out of that crypt and she has completely lost her mind and she
Mm.
goes after Roderick.
Yeah, I remember that story being, well, to circle back,
Yeah.
very like almost psychedelic.
Yes.
It's hard to tell what's going on. It's like reading someone's nightmare transcribed.
And Corman captures that.
Yeah.
And it's worth mentioning that this is the first of the Poe cycle. So when he made this, it's 1960, there was no successful one to fall back on. I mean,
Mm.
so you got to respect it. I mean, and it's a great movie, and I do
Yeah.
enjoy it.
A bold choice too. The Fall of the House of Usher is well renowned.
Yes, yes,
I
and
mean,
that's
most of Poe's work is, but some
yeah,
of it's better known than others.
yes, and Usher is definitely among the best known.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm going to put number five as The Pit and the Pendulum.
Another bold choice, another very famous short story.
Yes, yes. And I don't think, and let me just preface this at the front. I'm not sure that you can make a movie out of that short story, faithfully reenact that short story.
Yeah, the first half of it would have to be all black.
Yeah. So you can't do it. And so I respect the way that they went with it.
Mm.
Um, However, to me, that short story is so good.
It's excellent. It's impeccable.
It's impeccable, and that's almost the gold standard of horror short story to me.
Well, and I've talked to you about this before, probably
Yeah.
at length.
Yeah.
Um, so buckle up. But Poe preached brevity
Yes.
all the time. You
Yes.
know, he said that the main advantage a short story had over a novel is the completion of it, the
Yes.
totality of
Well, brother, that one is total.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, my problem, I think, with The Pit and the Pendulum, and I'm going to say it has one of my favorite scenes in movie history in it.
Mm.
Um, but I'm also going to say that there's no way that Corman can capture the sheer terror that Poe captures in that short story.
Oh yeah,
And,
it's a masterwork.
and it's always in the back of my mind when I watch this movie. Okay.
Hmm.
Having said that, my favorite scene, and I don't know why I like it so much, but the fiance, or the brother rather, is riding along the Spanish beach, and he sees this massive castle on a cliff, and
Mm.
it's obvious mat work, but it is wonderful mat work. And it is just, and there's nothing being said. He's just riding toward it, and they're doing the credits, and I'm like, you know, it's going to be a wonderful movie when you see that
Yeah,
scene.
I love mat work. It's it's by and large gone.
Yeah.
Um, but there was just something about it. You have these guys painting these gorgeous paintings, and the whole point of them was to
Mhm.
never get credit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's something I'm going to pause and bring up. I had, and Blake knows this, because I had these wonderful notes drawn up for this, and then I lost the notes before we did the podcast. But one of the things that I did was I went through and looked at these criteria. Okay, does this film include premature burial? Almost all of them do. Does this film have a freaky ass painting somewhere that figures into the story? Most of them do. And I didn't say anything about mats, but they did have a lot of them featured some wonderful mat work, you know.
Yeah.
And you know it's a mat when you look at it, but I think that adds to the fantasy and horror aspect of it.
Yeah. And it harkens back to stage plays.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But the long and the short of it is, Vincent Price's character is the son of an inquisitor, and he saw his own mother tortured to death. And he believes that he comes to believe that he buried his wife alive. And of course, she's planned the whole thing out because she's having an affair with the doctor. And at the end of it, she gets sealed up in an Iron Maiden like Vincent Price's mother did.
Mm.
And they don't know she's there. So it is truly creepy, but it still comes in at number 4 for
Mm. All
me.
right.
Okay. So let's talk about number 3. And I am going to say that number 3, and I think we're off on our numbering. Okay. So
That's fine.
actually, this is number 4, Mask of the Red Death.
Oh, okay. This one I know.
Yes. Yes. Um, to me, this may be the most psychedelic of all these movies.
When was this put out?
Mask of the Red Death was made in 1964. Blake, are you there? Okay,
I'm
we
here. Yeah.
we zoned out for a minute.
Mhm.
Okay, but these were the only two that were shot in England.
Oh, okay.
Okay, um, and of course it deals with the Red Death, which
Mhm.
is something similar to the Black Death, I suppose. And you have this Red Reaper who's going around collecting all these people, and this nobleman who's made a pact with Satan to protect himself in his house from the Red Death, and he's engaging in masochism and sadism and sexual perversion, and it's just it comes as close. The Hammer films 5 years after this was made, 7 years after this made, would begin turning to a lot of nudity and explicit sexual content. This movie implies it without showing it.
Which I think is effective, especially for the time period.
Yes, it's very effective. And it is a wonderful flick, but a little bit weird.
Hmm.
It's a little bit weird, you know.
Mm,
And then
yeah.
the next in our sequence, which I believe is number 3, um, I am gonna say it's The Tomb of Lygia.
Really?
Yes. I really enjoy The Tomb of Lygia.
Right.
Elizabeth Shepard is the heroine in this. I have met Elizabeth Shepard at Monsterama,
Oh, really?
and she will be there this year. She's gonna be at Monsterama, and let me tell you, she is very much like her character in this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she does not this I can see her doing all those things, and I don't think it was a stretch. I mean, she's just a card. Um, but anyhow, she falls in love with this guy that's wearing the big colored glasses because he's sensitive to light. Is it something fell? I can't remember the name of the character. It's Vincent Price. She leaves her fiance and marries him, and he has been widowed by Lygia. And Lygia was dabbling heavily in Egyptian magic.
Mm,
And they kill a fox. There's opening scene. There's a fox hunt, and they kill a fox, and Fell identifies it as an Egyptian fox, not found in England. And it turns out Lygia's, I don't know that she's alive, but she possesses um, Elizabeth Shepard's character, and
mm.
it just gets really, really weird.
Uh,
It
I love
involves
a weird movie.
hypnotism. There are some very psychedelic dream sequences, and Lygia is trying to kill her off because Lygia has found a way to cheat death. So she's not trying to kill her off; she's trying to kill her soul off and possess her body.
Whoa, well, I mean, that's much more reasonable.
Much more reasonable, really. Um, but at the end of it, Fell kills Lygia, who is also inhabited, who jumps out of she jumps out of Elizabeth Shepard into a black cat, which is another Poe homage. And so Fell tries to kill the cat blinds Fell completely, and they perish in the burning remains of the abbey. And Elizabeth Shepard's character is free to marry her fiance.
No, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
good for her.
Yes, happy ending.
Yeah. Mhm. Like all Poe short stories, a happy ending.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nothing happy in Poe.
No, not
Okay,
hardly.
number two is an interesting show. It's The Haunted Palace.
Okay.
And the only thing that it has to do with Poe is a quote at the beginning that has the words Haunted Palace.
Hmm.
The rest of it is based on H.P. Lovecraft's, what was it, Moon over Innsmouth?
The Shadow over Innsmouth.
Shadow over Innsmouth. And it is based on H.P. Lovecraft's Shadow over Innsmouth. It is very well written. It may, in fact, be the best H.P. Lovecraft movie out there.
Oof.
Yeah,
Okay.
it really is good. It has Lon Chaney Jr. in it, Vincent Price, and Vincent Price plays this character. He is the descendant of this warlock who was burned at the stake. Okay,
Hmm.
and by some happenstance, he inherits this estate in Arkham. And he goes and he sees this portrait, freaky ass portrait, hanging in the living room, and it looks just like him. Well, the portrait possesses him. It
Mm.
contains the spirit of the warlock and ultimately possesses Vincent Price. And at the end, he is the warlock reborn. And of course, what he's doing is he's going out and killing the descendants of the people that burned him at the stake.
Mm. Okay.
And they all seem to know what's going to happen. They realize that this is the warlock. I mean, they've been waiting around for a couple hundred years for this to happen, and it happens. As
So
you do
no
in
one's
Arkham,
surprised.
Massachusetts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, great movie. Um, there is, Lon Chaney Jr. is one of the descendants of one of the coven, and they have been waiting for this warlock's return for 200 years. They maintain a vault underneath, and they open these trap doors and they chain the girl to a post, and one of the elder gods is coming back for a sacrifice.
Mm.
And of course, the town doctor saves the girl and gets him out. Vincent Price again perishes in a burning house.
Mm.
I'm beginning to think that Vincent Price should never have been trusted with matches.
I mean, that checks out.
Yeah, he burned to death a lot in the movies.
Yeah. House of Wax,
Yeah, House of Wax, yes.
The
Um,
Abominable Dr. Fives.
yes, yes. I mean, just
Wow.
constantly burning alive. And now, drum roll, number one, and this is the choice that's going to get me kicked out of the Vincent Price fan club. My number one choice is Premature Burial.
Okay.
Premature Burial does not star Vincent Price.
Oh.
It stars Ray Milland. And I looked up, as I do, I wrote an article about the Poe cycle for Appalachian Book of the Dead, which is available for our Patreon subscribers.
Yes.
And I was researching it and I looked that up and I thought, I've never seen this. And so I start reading the description and it says Ray Milland was the leading character. And I'm sitting here going, who in the hell gave Roger Corman permission to cast Ray Milland in Vincent Price's slot?
Mhm.
And I almost didn't even watch it. And I thought, well, it's a Sunday afternoon, Dick. Let's watch this thing, take a few notes, see if it's worth watching.
Mhm.
And I was blown away.
Really?
Yeah, I was blown away. I don't, Ray Milland is not anywhere near the actor that Vincent Price was, but it is extremely well written, and this one was written by Richard Matheson.
A heavy
And
hitter to be sure.
um, Milland is, he comes from a cursed house and all the typical stuff, and he's convinced that he's going to go into cataleptic shock and be buried alive.
Mm.
And his brand new wife, who used to have a thing with the doctor, goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, one, all it's going to take is a major shock, and he's going to go into cataleptic shock. He's going to think he's dead. You're going to think he's dead. There'll be no way to tell that he's dead. And he builds this kind of elaborate tomb with all these ways to escape, and they make him tear it down because of his obsession, and you go through this whole thing, and his wife just dotes on him and is trying to keep him alive.
Mm.
Well, sure enough, after going through all that, he dies.
Mhm.
And the doctors, back then, doctors kind of apprenticed to an older doctor, and the older doctor is like, he's dead. And so the younger doctor even does some electric shock on him to see if he can get some reaction out of the muscles, and nothing happens. And he goes, he's dead. So they bury him. Well, guess what? He
He
ain't
ain't
dead.
dead. Yeah.
He ain't dead. So he comes back at this scene at the end of it, and he chases his wife down. He's stark raving bonkers, and he chases his wife down and he throws her into the ground and he starts burying her.
Mm.
And the doctor comes just in the nick of time and is trying to fight him with the shovel, and then his sister shows up and shoots him.
Mm.
And the doctor runs over and digs it. My own problem is that this chick has like an inch of dirt on her face and dies. But hey, it's Hollywood. And
Yeah.
so he digs the chick out and takes the pulse and goes, she's dead. And the sister goes, well deserved. And the doctor's like, what? And said, ever since you said that her husband would be sent into cataleptic shock by a single scare, she's been plotting this.
Mm.
So the wife had actually deliberately killed him, and he kills her, and the doctor kills him.
Okay.
So, the kind of the theme here is you got, don't let Vincent Price have matches.
No. No.
Number two, you got to watch the women. They'll get you,
Femme fatale.
especially,
Yeah.
especially if they're running around with doctors.
Yeah. Mm.
Uh,
Oh man. I
but
can't wait till the terror.
I can't either. And I hope everybody that watches this little podcast joins us. We want you all to be there. And like I said, if you join us Saturday night, we will be chatting on YouTube. It's a premiere. You can join in on that chat. If you happen to pick this up after Saturday night, the movie will still be there. You can go out and watch the movie.
Because it's always Saturday night on the internet.
It's always Saturday night on YouTube, folks.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great movies that you can watch on Tennessee Macabre's YouTube channel. So if you
Hmm.
haven't done that yet, make sure to subscribe, like, and watch some of our films.
All
Now,
right.
this is the only one of the of the Corman Poe cycle we can touch,
Yeah.
but
Unfortunately. Yeah.
unfortunately, because I'd show every one of them if I could. But
One long marathon.
yeah, man, that would be so cool. That's actually what I did last week preparing for this podcast. Is
Mm.
I did a Corman Poe marathon and
Yeah,
watched
that's cool.
yeah.
That's cool. All right. Well, until next time, I've been Blake Ray.
And I've been Duke Ralston.
We'll see y'all out there.